Mike Rounds says some candidates have already reached out to them, and he's confident they will ultimately be approved.
They're working their way down through the line of the folks normally on the committees that will be having their open hearings, but the vast majority, I think, of the members here take the same approach, and that is give that president the benefit of the doubt. Let's get his team together. Let's get them in place and start moving forward.
Closing arguments resumed today in New York in the trial of a former Marine who was charged in a homeless man's death after he was put in a chokehold to subdue him. Daniel Penny is charged with murder. But Fox News legal editor Carrie Urban says Penny was simply protecting passengers from a deranged man who said he wanted to kill people, and witnesses back that up.
I think it matters tremendously. The fact that every single one of those witnesses testified that they had, quote, never been as scared in their life as they were that day on the subway. And then this good Samaritan jumped in and saved them. At least that's what their perception was, and understandably, given what was going on. Illegal aliens have crossed the border under every administration, but the numbers show it was much greater during the Biden administration. And under Biden's watch, a lot of those illegals are still roaming America. In Florida, Congresswoman Kat Cammack says the reality is probably a lot worse than we know.
It is worse than people know. Just look at the fentanyl numbers alone. 300 people on average are being poisoned and killed every day by the fentanyl that is pouring over our borders into our communities. And what's even more damaging, I think, is the fact that if 300 people a day had died in an airline crash, if every day a plane was going down, there would have been every flight grounded by the end of the week, and a task force would have been set up to figure out how to fix it. Under the Biden administration, they didn't care. They let Americans die, and their blood is on their hands.
President Donald Trump has nominated Kash Patel to lead the FBI, and Steve Jordahl says the pick has the deep state spooked.
Kash Patel knows where the bodies are buried, as the saying goes, and the so-called deep state is none too pleased with the idea of him leading the agency. Patel was on President Trump's Office of the Director of National Intelligence and served as a back channel between the president and the intelligence agencies during Trump 1. Former FBI agent Bruce Rather says that gives him a special insight into the inner workings of the FBI.
He has actually seen the danger of this core of people, whether it be the Russiagate hoax, the jailing of the J6ers. A lot of it has been very unconstitutional under the present administration.
One of his tasks will be de-weaponizing the agency and bringing in an unbiased workforce that has justice as its guiding star, not political retribution.
We need someone to come into the FBI that does not owe anybody anything, somebody that is there that can look at things objectively.
Patel has a daunting task in front of him. Most of the deep state are career agents embedded deep in the agency. And Rather says there's been paper-shredding trucks parked at the FBI since Trump won the election. Patel could get pushback from members of Congress.
I fear that the record-keeping may have been messed with. Anytime Congress asks for any kind of oversight of the FBI, they receive documents that are completely redacted, or the FBI tells them, we can't find them.
He says getting to 30% of the deep state in the FBI would be seen as success. I'm Steve Jordahl.
For American Family News, I'm Steve Pugh.
Streaming.afa.net has now become AFA Stream, and you can find it at stream.afa.net. You see, we removed the letters ing. Our experts have determined that eliminating those 3 keystrokes, multiplied over hundreds of thousands of AFA Stream visits, could reduce the national debt and maybe increase the gross domestic product. AFA Stream, formerly streaming.afa.net. Improvements to the economy are purely theoretical. Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Whoa, fix this microphone here. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues. That's the name of this show right here on the American Family Radio Network for this Tuesday, December the 3rd, 2024. I have 3 slightly better than average co-hosts with me today. Wesley Wildman. Good morning, Wesley.
Good evening. I don't know if that's a compliment or insult, but we'll go with it.
Well, if you're going with evening right now, I think it's evening somewhere, though.
That's right.
It's somewhere. Wesley Wildman with us, and Fred Jackson. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning.
and Christopher Woodward.
For anybody in that.
Chris Woodward.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll reintroduce you because your mic wasn't working right there.
Hello.
Chris Woodward. Yeah, good morning, Chris. How you doing, brother?
I'm well.
All right. So thanks for listening to American Family Radio. We got a lot to talk about today, which is, as I say, a good thing because it's a talk show. We got like an hour and a half here on the program. I wanted to make mention real quickly before we jump into the news. You've heard us talk about it, but we've got our 2025, I call them spiritual heritage tours. They're various, and we're already like booking people like crazy. So I don't know why that is exactly, maybe the election results or whatever, but people are really wanting to get out there and travel and go with us in 2025. So I would just say this, in June and September, we will have our spiritual heritage tours of Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon. That's George Washington's Mount Vernon. That's one tour. And back-to-back with that is our Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, Yorktown American History Tour, if you will. So if you want to go with us to Williamsburg and D.C. back-to-back, that's a week. It's a week of your time, but we'll take care of you from beginning to end, but it's 7 days. Plan on 7 days if you want to see the whole thing. Williamsburg, Colonial, Jamestown, Washington, D.C., everything. So that's June and September. And then in October, we're going to Boston for the first time, and that tours, people are signing up every day to go with us to Boston, right, Wesley?
That's right. Yeah, we've already filled up the first bus going on bus number 2.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And we've got
Tim Barton.
Timothy Barton from Wall Builders will be going with us, as well as
Stephen
McDowell, the Providence Foundation. So we will have 2 bona fide historians on the trip with us. So to Boston. So
what are we going to be bona fide in?
Finding good restaurants.
Okay.
Yeah, good restaurants, and making sure the bus runs on time.
That's right.
That's our job. Stephen McDowell and Timothy Barton will give all the history. So we're not going to Boston just to say, hey, look at that. Isn't that nice? Look at that building. We're going to learn about the people, places, times, and events that impacted the early American history experience, like we do in Williamsburg, except we're moving up the coast there to Boston. So we're going to Boston. We're going to eat good. It's in October, so there'll be some foliage to see, as Fred knows, being from that region of the world. And in October is a prime time for seeing the leaves change color and so forth. So here's if you want information on any of those trips I just mentioned, simply go to this website, wildmangroup.com, WILDMON group.com. Wildman, WILDMON, group, GROUP.com. If you go to Wildman with an A group, I don't know what kind of tour you're going to get there.
You're not going to find it.
Probably not going to be family friendly.
That's right.
Okay, so so you be careful about what you type in there.
Speaking about Wildman, I wonder, the other day we signed my son up for a local baseball facility to use during the winter months. And they put his name and my name down as Wild Man.
Yes.
And everything still works. All my access cards, all those things that I can so I wondered if do I even say anything at this point?
It's up to you.
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, my card works when I go in.
Probably it doesn't matter.
Let it go.
I don't think you could get them to change it probably, but that's what happened.
You got to deal with that.
What happened is your great grandmother changed it.
That's what it is. So we can.
Find her. Yeah, I mentioned that before, but our name was WILDMAN. This is back in the 20s, 1920s. Oh, we're in the 20s now, except for 2024. That was 1920s, I think. And my grandmother said, "I'm tired of the jokes, so we're going to change her name spelling." And so she just started writing it WILDMON instead of MAN. And she didn't register with anybody. She didn't, no forms. She just started writing it different. And here we are today, 100 years later, with the change of our name. So I'm just wondering, are we really? We may not even be
Official.
legal citizens.
I know that's
We may be illegal immigrants
it's a
here
concern.
in our own country, huh?
I know. Well,
So-
I started this, so that's my
Yeah,
fault.
yeah. All right, Chris, what's in the news right now?
I want to bring everybody's attention to something Fred posted on afn.net just before the show, and details are still coming out on this, so do stick around with American Family Radio for more on this as it develops. But South Korea's president today declared martial law, vowing to eliminate what he calls anti-state forces as he struggles against an opposition that controls the country's parliament and which he accuses of sympathizing with communist North Korea. It has been decades since the people of South Korea saw anything in the way of martial law, and the military says the country's this could all cause problems. People are not going to be able to enter parliament buildings, other political
changing.
gatherings.
Excuse me for interrupting you. I got breaking news on your breaking news.
Okay,
Chris.
he has the TV behind.
What's it say there, Chris?
Well, there's a contradiction between CNN and BBC at this time. The CNN is saying South Korean troops descend on parliament as opposition politicians vote to overturn martial law. And then BBC is saying South Korea parliament passes motion to lift martial law. So I'm not sure. The president, a few hours ago, declared martial law, as Chris is saying from the Associated Press. The president believes the opposition members are sympathetic to North Korea. The only way martial law can end is if Parliament votes to end it. So I'm not sure of the sequence of events. BBC is saying they did pass a motion to lift martial law, but the question is now, is the president and the military going to recognize that vote?
We've got one of our staff lives over there
Yes,
in South Korea.
one of our IT
American boy married a South Korean girl, moved over there.
Mm-hmm.
So we got some personal interest in what's going on over there. So what we're saying is this story's been developing the last hour or so.
Mm-hmm.
South Korea, which is a strong ally of the United States, it's a free republic. I've never been there, but basically they live like we live here. In the U.S. and Canada, but they've got a serious situation there. If the president of the is he called the president?
It's called the president.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If he's called for martial law, and now the Parliament, is that what they're called?
Yes.
The Parliament supposedly, according to BBC, has passed basically a reversal of that. So that sounds like to me there's some great tension.
I'm getting caught up as we're going here. This is the first I've heard of it. What's the purpose? Why are they calling for martial law?
Because he is concerned there's communist sympathizers there that are fighting against his government and the party.
You know, the thing is, the American military has a very strong presence there. That's one reason why we're interested in this, but also
because of North Korea.
Yeah, the last thing you want is great instability in South Korea.
Right, I know.
With the nut that you have running North Korea.
Right, that's true.
He could take advantage of this, so that's why we want to watch this very carefully.
Yeah, so we may have more to report in the next hour or so, but yeah, you're right. North Korea right there with Kim Jong-un, and we've got South Korea is one of the most stable countries in the world, has been, and so this is concerning.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing here, the president that declared martial law over there again in South Korea, the president's party is known as the People Power Party, and he has declared martial law on the people.
I know that you can't. Okay, I know there are people who are going to disagree with what I say, and that's okay. But you can't practically implement martial law in the United States.
No.
You can implement martial law maybe for a day or two in a particular city or a state, maybe a state, but American people will not tolerate being told sit home and put your guns up for more than for you better have some kind of good reason for it, and like a natural disaster hits, and you don't want looting, and you don't want people out on the streets. You implement martial law maybe for
you do, and
for a few hours or a day or two.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in South Korea, it's a much smaller landmass than the United States. I don't know what South Korea is maybe the size of Florida or something. I don't know.
I'll look.
So, so you may be able to implement that for a day or two, a couple of days, but even people in South Korea, they're not going to put up with being told sit home, stay home because of what exactly. So I don't know.
Potential riot.
Yeah.
It is the size of Indiana, according to
Indiana. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know what? You understand what I'm saying here, Fred?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this story is developing. It's the first time we've heard of this kind of unrest coming out of South Korea, but this is a very dramatic move for the president to call in the military to try to stop people from Parliament going ahead. Now, his declaration, as we said, is that he believes amongst the opposition party that there are North Korean sympathizers. First I've heard of that. I've not seen any stories of this. So hopefully this is going to end fairly quickly and without too much more violence.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, there has been violence?
Well, we've noticed some people.
There's some
marching
unrest.
through. Yeah.
How many people live in South Korea? I'm going to guess 50 million.
It's a lot.
I'm just going to guess 50 million, something like that, because Seoul is one of the largest.
I'm going to take you to, not that I would gamble,
Yeah.
but if I
If you
did.
did.
51.71 million.
I just guess. See there? Huh? You want to gamble?
an
You go with
educated
what? You
guess,
want to
though.
gamble? You go with what I say.
When I'm on the Price is Right, finally, I'm taking Tim with me.
So 51 million. Seoul, the largest city there, is probably 20. I don't know, 15 to 20. That's a big place. But all right, so we will watch and see what happens there in South Korea. You know, a lot of us have said, not just me on our panel here, but people listening. A lot of people I've heard out there have said, you better be careful what happens between the election and the inauguration.
Yeah.
Huh?
Sure.
Yes.
Because who's in charge? Nobody.
That's right. Yep.
Nobody's in charge. You go into it's like getting in a jet and walking up to the cockpit and there's nobody there.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's been nobody there since June that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
Since it was revealed to the world that President Biden, he wasn't all there.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
The biggest news that's come from the White House is President Joe Biden pardoning his son.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, right.
The last 3-4 months. That's it.
It's on autopilot, whatever that means. So we've basically been without a president for 6 months. Now some would say longer than that. That's just when we discovered we were without a president. But the Democrats said you're not going to run as our party's representative,
Right.
Joe Biden. You're going to have to forget that idea, but because you're incapable of doing it, but you're capable of staying on as the leader of the free world for 7 more months.
Mm-hmm.
How does that add up?
Yeah, that was lost in all the media discussion about the new who's going to be the new president or
Right.
who's going to run. That got lost in all that they were admitting something that is that he's incapable of running, but yet he's still in office.
And this Joe Biden pardoning his son Hunter Biden is an indication, and I've heard others say this, that Joe Biden has no respect for his own party right now, because many Democrats have come out and condemned him for pardoning his son for breaking numerous laws.
Mm.
And so you've got what people are saying is that Joe Biden is angry with his own party. So he doesn't care whether he embarrasses the Democratic Party right now, and he certainly doesn't care about Republicans either. So you've got the President of the United States who feels he's got nothing to lose with whatever decision he makes over the next 3.5, 4 weeks. That's pretty scary.
With no accountability, really.
No.
I say no accountability. There are accountability checks.
Mm-hmm.
He can't do anything, but I'm just saying there's no political accountability for him because he's got nothing to lose.
Keep in mind, he said several times, and that's being conservative, several times he would not pardon Hunter. And then
also you got to be careful, too, about what Joe Biden has said and promised not to do or to do.
With other things.
Because all bets are off now. Now, you're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Wesley, Fred, and Chris. So we got the breaking story in South Korea. There's the president there has declared martial law. There's been reports by the BBC that the parliament is voting to not accept that. So there's some contention there. I don't know whether there's going to be. We don't know whether there's going to be violence.
Well,
or not in the streets.
Yeah, we're just looking at some pictures there right now. And we don't know where the people are with this, the population. Are they on the side of the party that controls the parliament right now?
Yeah.
Or are they with the president? So this is unfolding, folks, in real time.
Yeah. All right, back here at home in the U.S., there's still the fallout from Biden pardoning Hunter Biden, right?
Yes, this has been a huge topic for Fox News, but even people on CNN have been talking about it, including CNN contributor Scott Jennings. He had this to say about the pardon. Clip 4.
These people are liars. Inflation is transitory. Afghanistan, it's a success. The border is secure. Robert Hur is a liar. The videos are cheap fakes. Biden has a cold. He'll never drop out. Oh, I'll never pardon Hunter. Joe Biden, Karine Jean-Pierre. How many minutes of tape do we have of both of these people telling the American people this will not happen? We could play it all morning. It's a lie. This is the worst possible thing a president could possibly do to his party and to the country.
Why do you think, Fred, and Wesley, you can comment, why do you think, Fred, that Scott Jennings right there, the gentleman you just heard, he's a conservative on CNN.
Correct.
Commentator.
Mm-hmm.
But why do you think he said what he said there at the end, that this is the worst possible thing a president could do to his party, Fred?
Well, it sets a precedent for other presidents down the line to do basically pardon anybody at all, because you got to remember the history right now is that, you know, Hunter Biden has pled guilty to many of these charges. He was going to be sentenced on the tax evasion one within a couple of weeks. So he's guilty of the crimes. So you have that. So a president playing favorites with his family members. That's not supposed to happen. But also, I think what's going on here, and people haven't raised this question too much yet, is Joe Biden also hoping that through this, the investigations will stop into his involvement with Hunter Biden's finances.
Yep.
Because remember what we've been reporting, and others have been reporting over the last 2 years, that Hunter Biden was handing money to his dad. I mean, that's the allegation. We're talking millions of dollars. Chinese, remember that phone call? Remember that phone call with China, with Hunter Biden talking? And he says, I have my dad right here, sitting beside me. Joe Biden, of course, told us, not involved with my son's business dealings. Of course he was.
Yeah.
When he was vice president, this is why it goes back so far, this pardon. When he was vice president, what he did when his son was sitting on the board of Burisma, that Ukrainian energy company, making, what was it, $80,000 a month or whatever it was?
It was a lot.
Joe Biden goes there and he tells the Ukrainian government, you've got to pardon the attorney general there of your country who's investigating Burisma while his son was sitting on the board.
Fire him, not pardon him.
Yeah, fire him.
Yeah.
And
he was interfering. Joe Biden, then VP, was interfering in internal Ukrainian politics in order to benefit his son financially.
And he threatened Ukraine, saying, we're not going to give you any more money, United States.
Right.
And he bragged.
Right.
Joe Biden said, within hours, I got that attorney general fired.
And another reason the Democrats are criticizing, a lot of them, especially the media, is criticizing Joe Biden for this decision to pardon his own son. Another reason is the obvious for us as conservative is we're going, well, if that's the case, when Donald Trump gets in there, then what's wrong with him? Where's going to be their leverage when he goes to pardon the J6ers or others? But that's the obvious one, and so they're losing a lot of credibility there with President Trump when he is inaugurated.
Yeah, I think what this all the things you guys have said are true. What this really means, though, is the reason there's a lot of people upset on the left and the right on this one is that this was all a charade. Okay, Biden tried to play like he was above it all. I will not pardon my son if he gets convicted of federal tax evasion or this the lying on the gun form when he was had drug problems. We know that. So I'll let the courts decide, and I will abide by their decision, and I will not pardon him.
I won't get involved in.
I won't get involved. Over and over and over. He did that. Biden did that to. The inference was, see what I'm doing. I'm a law and order guy, while former President Trump over here is rogue. He's a lawless person who doesn't. He's a threat to democracy. You see how they tried to draw that contrast, politically speaking.
That's right.
And so now that Biden has lost by virtue of him stepping down, and Harris has lost, the Democrats have lost the White House, it doesn't matter anymore. And this is why I use the word charade. Now you can just do what you were going to do all along, which is pardon your son for the crimes, so he doesn't have to serve any prison time. And there's, but you do lose some, as you're saying, Wesley. You do lose some, quote, moral authority. The Democrats do. I know people are laughing, but like they ever had any. But I'm just saying, now they can't say that Biden is a law and order guy. The Democrats are law and order, because see, he didn't even pardon his own son. Now that's off the table, so the Republicans can do
and all his crimes, like as Fred mentioned, many of them he confessed to.
Oh yeah, he confessed to. That's why he got the deal that he got.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are not accusations anymore. No. These are admitted.
No, he
crimes.
confessed to it. And as I said yesterday, if I were Joe Biden, when this was being asked of me a year ago or so, whenever, I would have said, listen, I don't know what I'll do. When the time comes, I'll let you know. Mm-hmm. I may pardon him. I may not. I don't know. I don't know what the circumstances will be. But no, he didn't do that. He said,
absolutely,
absolutely, I won't pardon him. And he said it over and over and over again. And Karine Jean-Pierre,
we have audio
of her. We're gonna play those.
We can do that.
The golden oldies.
Oh well, we've got some current stuff about the pardon.
Okay. Anyway, Karine Jean-Pierre, bless her heart, she has to go out there and repeat Biden's whoppers.
Yeah.
Yep.
But she does so.
She does a good job of it.
She does so with a smile on her face.
That's right.
Hey, I'm getting a paycheck. I'll go tell lies if you want me to. Who do you want me to tell? Where do I go tell whoppers to today?
Where can I practice?
Right. We'll be back momentarily.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
And he said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to the whole creation." Some years ago, I made what was to me a startling discovery. I was reading about what happened on that Good Friday in Jerusalem, nearly a couple of thousand years ago. I read again about how they hung that man among men on those 2 sticks of wood. I could feel the blows of the hammer as they drove the nails into his palms. I could feel the jar as the cross was dropped into its hole, and came to rest with a terrific jolt. The flesh ripped and the blood spurted. You remember the rest of the events. You remember how the crowd jeered him, made fun of him, jokingly dared him to come down. It was a scene that has been repeated often in the history of mankind. Over and over again, that lowly Galilean has been nailed to those 2 pieces of wood. Many times we've stood around jeering him, making fun of his claims, slashing his side with our selfish spears. But you can remember also that the story didn't end on that dark day. Finding an unused tomb in a garden nearby, they laid him in it. And then, because the next day was an especially holy one, hardly anyone moved. But Saturday is always followed by Sunday, and on Sunday those who loved him found what all who have loved him since have found, an empty tomb. I said I made what was to me a startling discovery. I had thought of that cross and that empty tomb as the most dynamic events in history. I had always considered these as the top jewels to place on a crown of greatness. But now I see that they weren't the greatest part of his faith. Now I can see that for years my sight just did not go far enough to find the most tremendous event in the history of mankind. Now I can see what the greatest part of this carpenter's faith is, and it's amazing. He entrusted the work of his church to those 11 men, those disciples, who had just prior to the resurrection betrayed him. That, without a doubt, is the grandest thing about him, that he trusted common people with the responsibility of his church. Can we see that? Can we understand what it means? That he should give the greatest responsibility ever known to mankind to those 11 men? That is, without question, the highest sign of his love and his trust in mankind. He entrusted his kingdom not to the high and mighty, to the great and gallant, to the brave and brilliant, but to common people. And he goes on entrusting his church to common, plain, ordinary folk. How great his trust in us, that he should give to plain folk the tremendous privilege of carrying on his work, speaks of his great trust in the common person. No one would have dared to trust those 11 men with such a great responsibility except the Nazarene. No one else had such a trust in common folk like you and me. So the next time you're inclined to lose hope in mankind, give it a thought.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." Matthew 19, verse 14.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
Hey, welcome back to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. All right, so it's Tim, Wesley, Fred, and Chris today on the program. And we thank you, again, we thank you for listening. We mentioned this at the top of the hour. The president of South Korea, a few hours ago, issued a martial law for that country of 50+ million people. And now, according to the BBC, that's the British Broadcasting Company, the South Korean Parliament has voted to lift that martial law. So you have and the reason declared by the president was what, Fred?
The reason declared by the president was that he said there were elements in the party that controls the parliament, elements of sympathizers to North Korea. So he felt he declared they were a danger to the country.
But it must have been something imminent, because you can't, it doesn't seem to me you couldn't declare martial law just for, hey, we're going to have to give us a few months. We'll get back to you. We're going to have to investigate this.
Right.
So I don't know.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens now. Is that, okay, so the South Korean parliament votes to lift martial law. So who is the military going to be loyal to? Mm-hmm. Are they going to be loyal to the president, or are they going to be loyal to the parliamentary vote?
Okay, well, what I'm understanding, the parliament has a right to overrule the president.
Constitutionally.
And if they did, then the president, then they would have to abide by the law.
So, well, I would hope the military would.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so back to what's happening here at home. Of course, we are a few weeks away yet from the transfer of power, hopefully and prayerfully, the peaceful transfer of power from Joe Biden to Donald Trump.
Yes, he did say there would be a peaceful transition, but again, Joe Biden said he would not pardon Hunter. So,
But it just duly noted, Chris. So we got to play. Is this Karine Jean-Pierre?
it is outgoing White House
I'm
Press
gonna miss
Secretary
her.
Karine
You know,
Jean-Pierre.
aren't you guys?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So
I wish her well.
yeah. I don't. So go ahead. What do we got? What do we got from Karine?
Yeah, so
Jean-Pierre?
as we were talking about during the break, pretty much she comes out there and says whatever the White House wants her to say, including the fact that the president has always been honest and truthful with people about issues, including the pardon of Hunter Biden here. Don't take my word for it. Clip 6.
You have said repeatedly yourself since the election, the president has said for months, no pardon was coming. I wanted to ask you, could those statements now be seen as lies from the American people? Is there really a credibility issue here given now this announcement?
First of all, one of the things that the president always believes is to be truthful to the American people. That is something that he always truly believes. And if you see the end of his, I assume that you've read his statement, and you look at the end of that statement, and he actually says that in the first line in the last paragraph, and respects the thinking and how the American people will actually see this.
I don't even know what she said there.
She's talking about the statement at the as to why he
First of all, I would not. Somebody needs to get with her. And listen, that first thing she said. Let's go back and listen to that. The first thing she says is absolutely hysterical.
It's going to begin with the question.
She's asking about, shouldn't this be perceived as lies? And then she says what? Go ahead.
You have said repeatedly yourself since the election, the president has said for months, no pardon was coming. I wanted to ask you, could those statements now be seen as lies from the American people? Is there really a credibility issue here given now this announcement?
First of all, one of the things that the president always believes is to be truthful to the American people.
Okay, that's it.
That's the part. He says one thing the president always believes is to be truthful.
Yes. After the guy just set her up and said, basically he said, he lied to our face and so did you. What do you got to say about it? She goes, well, do we just believe in being truthful? Huh? Yes. It's like right over the top of her head.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, the Bible talks about a conscience being seared, which means you don't even know that you're a bold-faced liar anymore.
I know.
You just
I know
they do it so often.
I wish they could give truth serum to somebody like her though, and she could come out there and say, "I know, he lied to me too."
You should have heard what
Unbelievable,
we talked about.
Huh?
It's really interesting that this was Karine Jean-Pierre aboard Air Force One when the president. He pardons his son Hunter and then takes off for a trip to Africa somewhere.
Yes.
Is that where he's
Yeah,
headed?
so she was making these comments aboard Air Force One.
Correct.
Yeah.
And she goes on to say in her comments, well, the president still believes in the integrity of the Justice Department. And then she says, but.
Right, I know.
Now he believes
I know.
it was politically motivated. Well, you can't have the
I
two.
know.
You're saying
Yep.
you're trying to say, yes, I believe it. The Justice Department has great integrity, but then you say, but the charges against my son were politically motivated.
Yeah.
For the longest, for the last several years, we would cover stories like this, and she and her party and her administration would do things like this, and we would report it in the same way. But it almost seemed like for many years it was just us that kind of saw behind the curtains here, or kind of read between the lines. But as the election has proven, there are a lot more people, and they have been discredited more and more to the point where I'm starting to feel a little bit of satisfaction here that they are not able to get past the American people what they were able to get past for many, many years. Which is an obvious lying.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, lying was a tool to be used.
Sure.
Remember things like the Inflation Reduction Act?
Yeah.
Which even they admitted later, it had nothing to do with inflation.
Yeah, no.
It had to do with spending. They told us the border was secure.
Yeah.
They lied.
And Biden was
healthy, good to go, healthy as a horse.
Said Biden was on top of his game.
Most energetic man in the room.
That was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Or 8 months ago. Biden was on top of his game, sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
Then we go out then we have a live debate, and he's looking off into space. Yeah. We're like, huh?
Hey, but they beat Medicare.
Yeah. Anyway,
right.
Listen, this is again. I think Biden. The only fallout from this for Biden. Biden doesn't care. I mean, there's nothing you can do. He has the ultimate authority here to do what he did. And he'll pardon some more people, as all presidents do when they leave office. But it's just the fact that he tried to play, the law and order. I don't like this expression necessarily, but holier than thou against Trump. I'm the law and order guy. I will respect the law. Even if my son gets convicted, I will not interfere. Remember that?
No one is above the law.
And here he is saying, didn't really mean that. Yeah. I'm going to interfere. I'm going to pardon my son. Let's move on to the next story, Chris. What do you got?
Let's do this. A congressional subcommittee issued some findings yesterday.
Did they?
Which were not.
Did a congressional subcommittee issue a finding yesterday?
They sure did, Tim.
And you dug it up.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
they
issued findings that pretty much were no surprise to most Americans at this point, 5 years almost removed from COVID-19. But a congressional subcommittee is closing out its near 2-year investigation of the coronavirus pandemic. And among its findings, the virus did originate in a Chinese lab in Wuhan, China. It was not natural, and that the mask mandates from Fauci and others, as well as lockdowns, did more harm than good, including children losing years of learning. I have some audio here.
Told you so.
Right. Yeah, I saw this and was like, people said this back in 2022. But nonetheless, I do have some audio.
Who are we going to hear from?
This is John Elliott. He is a former Trump national security aide. Clip 12.
You're going to see a lot more oversight of this because Americans are really tired. We lost, to your point about the children. Look, also old people who are in old folks' homes, et cetera, they would not even be seen by their relatives as they passed away under this lockdown. And so nobody wants to see this happen again. And this is why there's going to be real accountability. Once again, this ties a bow on it. And this is a way that Congress can now say, look, we want to make sure that this never, ever happens again. And we have this bogus science at the top and all this masking mandates that really hurt the American people.
It'll be interesting to see whether Dr./Senator Rand Paul will continue on his crusade to prove he was true, or he was accurate in his denouncing of Anthony Fauci.
He's going to have a lot of support now. That's for sure. The people that Trump is nominating for these positions are people who were skeptical all the way along, are people who were shut down. You have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. when he talks about vaccines and the dangers of them.
Right.
So it's amazing what has happened. We've gone 180 degrees to what we experienced over the last 4 years of being told you have to shut yourself down, you can't go visit people, shut down your schools. Now we're going to have people in charge who are not going to allow this kind of nonsense to happen again.
Yeah. For people that have not paid as much attention to Trump appointments in recent days, one of the big ones right before Thanksgiving was the nomination of Dr. Jay Bhattacharya to head up the National Institutes of Health. That was a position once held by Dr. Francis Chan.
Yes.
Francis Collins.
Oh, he was a preacher.
Yeah. I get my Franks mixed up. But anyway, Dr. Bhattacharya is well known. He was one of the co-founders of the Great Barrington Declaration, which early on in the days and weeks leading out of the COVID outbreak said, hey, lockdowns are a terrible idea. He got ridiculed for it, but he was proven right, and now Trump wants him to head up NIH.
Yep.
Interesting stuff there.
All right, next story.
All right. Meanwhile, the incoming Trump administration is still telling state governors and Democratic mayors, we are going to deport illegal immigrants. These people came here illegally. They're draining resources. Some of them are being arrested for crimes. Some of them are being convicted of crimes. We have to do something about this to protect American people. One of the things that people want Trump to do is go after Mexican cartels. And I can say that based on the guy Trump wants to be border czar, Tom Homan. It says Trump himself should go after Mexican cartels. Clip 13.
President Trump has said that he's going to declare these criminal cartels terrorist organizations, which he should. The criminal cartels in Mexico have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. And that's why President Trump will designate them terrorist organization and wipe them off the face of the earth.
I'm curious to see what the response might be from the international world if we were to send some sort of law enforcement or military into another country to wipe out people inside that country that are causing harm to a whole bunch of people.
Well, that's the question that I have. Just heard Tom Homan declare these cartels terrorist organizations. Does this then give license to the president to send military squads into Mexico and to take out these cartels? That's what it sounds like.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a toughie right here in the sense that do you want? I know some people think it toughie. Why is it? Do you really want United States military operating inside Mexico?
That depends on what it's for.
Taking on. Now, I will say, you already have federal agencies that are armed to do battle with these. I would think the Drug Enforcement Agency has armed agents that can go get into, you know what I'm saying? But I don't know if you want the Marines. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I appreciate AFM bringing in the Tom Homan clip because that's what I requested last week was I need one clip from Tom Homan because he's my dude.
Well, I had to make up after saying the wrong Francis in NIH.
I want to hear that again. I want to hear. Now, he's going to be Trump's what?
Border czar.
Border czar.
Border czar. And I want to hear what he has to say again. I want to hear this again.
President Trump has said that he's going to declare these criminal cartels terrorist organizations, which he should. The criminal cartels in Mexico have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. And that's why President Trump will designate them terrorist organization and wipe them off the face of the earth.
Yeah, well,
I think we all heard it.
If you're connected with bringing drugs over the border, then I do believe you should find somebody should find out where that drugs are coming from and shut it down.
Well, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, back during the
campaign
when he was running for president, the GOP, he said that he would send special forces after the cartels in Mexico. Now, is that military forces? That sounds like it to me. I mean, special forces, I think of Navy SEALs, you think of Green Berets, those types.
Well, I think the significance is the designating these people as terrorists. Because
the drug cartels.
Yes, because obviously we have precedents of going after terrorists in various parts of the world in the wake of, the attack on this country, 9/11.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how mixed feelings.
That may be a question for a constitutional lawyer.
Yeah. Well, we just happen to have one. Excuse me.
And it's not you, and it's not
No,
me.
it's not me. It's not me. A lot of people confuse me as a constitutional lawyer, but
no, I've never done that, though.
You've never, no, but you haven't, but others do when I go out to eat lunch. And
sure, it happens.
There's a constitutional lawyer ordering a fajita right over there. So Jenna Ellis joins us. From Jenna Ellis in the morning, heard on American Family Radio each weekday, 7 to 8 o'clock Central Time. Jenna is a constitutional attorney. That is, she's written a book on it and teaches on it, and so she's well versed in the United States constitutional law. Jenna, good morning.
Good morning. Great to join you guys. And I don't often get confused for a boomer when I go out. So I
noticed how you hesitated about saying that because
I did.
Yeah,
I
you did because am I gonna insult my boss?
I went
not?
for it.
Yeah,
but
you did go for it.
I remember Jenna's last day.
Let me tell you, there's a lot to be said for the boomers. There's a lot to be said. Without the boomers, you wouldn't even be here.
That is very true.
Talk to your parents, Jenna.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm thankful for the boomers, and
because they make you feel young, right, Jenna?
That's so true. Wasn't going to say that.
At least I'm a young boomer.
Absolutely.
I'm on the tail end of the boomers. I was born in
See,
60.
I'm an old millennial.
Yeah,
so there's that.
It's like a country song.
I look like I'm old enough to be Brent's dad.
That's our country song. Remember that country song, Old Hippies? I'm an old hippie. Jenna's an old millennial. All right, so Jenna, we played Tom Homan. I don't know if you heard that. The border czar for Trump coming up soon, talking about but the border czar's informal. What's his formal title? What will his formal title be?
Well, that is his title. He isn't head.
Well, who's Homeland Security then?
Kristi Noem.
Kristi Noem.
Kristi Noem.
So, Jenna, do you know does the border czar work under the direction of the Homeland Security? It does, doesn't it?
Well, what reports are saying is that Tom Homan will work directly for President Trump. I mean, he'll be part of Homeland Security and have that kind of authority, but he'll report directly to Donald Trump, which which is kind of anyway how Trump, at least in his first administration and on the campaigns, like when I worked for him. I mean, that was kind of how he wanted it with all of the top advisors anyway.
Even if they weren't cabinet level.
Right.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Can a president send special forces? Governor DeSantis talked about this when he was running. That's what Holman was talking about right there. He was talking about Trump will declare them terrorist organizations, that is, the Mexican drug cartels, which run a lot of the illegal immigration over the border in Mexico into the United States. Can you declare them a terrorist organization? Who can do that? Do you know? And if so, what does that mean in terms of using the United States military?
In terms of declaring, I'm not sure I understand the question. In terms of declaring,
do you know if Trump, when he's president coming up, can he say, I hereby declare that these Mexican drug cartels are the same as ISIS? They're a terrorist organization. Therefore, we can use the United States military against them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, so the president and...
Does he have unilateral authority to do that, or does that have to be passed by Congress, or have we even ever faced this question before? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is actually under the Anti-Terrorism Act of, I think it was back in the 90s, and the Secretary of State actually under the executive branch has the authority to designate a group as a foreign terrorist organization. And so there is certain criteria. I mean, obviously the organization has to be foreign. It has to engage in what qualifies as a terrorist activity. But there is a process, and the designation is published by the Department of State, and then Congress is notified. So that does have consequences in terms of that type of designation. So it's really more of the declaration of war that constitutionally has to go through Congress.
Okay, so I'm going to just make a prediction here, which my predictions are 50-50. I'll just tell you right, don't go to the casino with me.
Unless you're guessing the population of South America.
Right.
Yeah, some things are better at that than others,
Yeah.
but political prognostications, I'm batting about 500, which 500 in baseball is pretty good, but
It is.
500 on a test is only 50%, and you
fail.
you get an F.
Yeah.
So I'll just say this.
Unless there's 500 questions, and then you get them all right.
Well, duly noted. That's right. I would just say this, and I think most Americans, the reality of this is here. We're not going to have mass deportations, okay? I don't care what President Trump says. I don't care what Tom Homan says. Is that his name, Tom?
Mm-hmm. I don't think Tom Homan's even said that, though.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think he's more targeted to, when I've heard him speak most recently, his biggest effort is deporting those that have a criminal record.
Yeah,
I think they're going to focus on the violent criminals, but Trump has certainly talked about
mass deportation. He said, but Trump, bless his heart, he just talks out
part of the deal.
He'll just say anything too. I mean,
and Mexico will pay for it.
And he doesn't mean half the things he says. Okay,
there's a strategy to art of the deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying you can't always believe what Trump says. Okay, I'm just going to say that. I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm not saying I didn't vote for him. I'm just saying he has a lot of hyperbole in his statements.
A whole lot, yeah.
So there's not going to be mass deportations. You can forget that. Plus, the American people, probably the five of us included, if we saw a bunch of ICE officials going in and raiding apartment building after apartment building after apartment building, taking out women and children and throwing them in vans with handcuffs on, we would say, stop that. That's appalling.
Bill Clinton got ridiculed.
That is unacceptable, and we don't want you to do that. So I don't think the American people, conservatives, liberal, whatever, have the stomach for what I've just described. Now, violent criminals, yes, but as I've said before, this is Tim talking here, a young baby boomer. I don't think sending violent criminals away from their punishment here in the U.S. is a good idea. You commit a crime on U.S. soil. I don't want the guy in Georgia that murdered that young lady in Athens, Georgia. I don't want him being deported to his home country where he'll probably be let free. I want him punished here in the United States and going to prison because this is where he committed the crime, Wesley. Go ahead.
Well, then what do you do with the ones that are let out, like the ones in New York? So
what do you mean?
They committed a crime. They get put in jail overnight, and then they get let out on bail.
Well, you can deport them.
That's what I'm. Yeah.
Deport them if you want to. Yeah. Of course, they're going to go to Mexico and come right back over again, unless Trump's in charge. I do think Trump will crack down on that and keep that repetitive, repeat offenders.
There are taxpayer dollars though that are paying towards these criminals to be in prison too.
That's true.
And so there's a
maybe the threshold should be violent. In other words, if you commit a violent crime here in the United States, you stay in the United States for your punishment,
and then you get deported.
Yeah.
That's a compromise for sure. But also too, on this list, you have those that have committed violent crimes who have served their time, and then they've been let out.
Then you deport them.
Yeah.
You deport them. You take them from the prison.
Start there.
Straight to the airplane.
There's plenty to do there.
Straight back home. Anyway, so this is going to be big. This is going to be a big challenge for the new administration, don't you think, Jenna? This whole issue.
Yeah, I think it'll be a big challenge, and I think this is why all of this discussion is why the policy around this is a discussion piece. But I mean, I just covered this morning on my show how the city of New York is paying $220 million to rent the entire Roosevelt Hotel in downtown Manhattan. I mean, I've stayed there before prior to its closure in 2020. It's right in downtown Manhattan, and the city of New York is paying that to house illegal migrants. And the hotel is owned by the government of Pakistan. I mean, this is just utter nonsense. And so when you're talking about something like this, my thought on that is, well, look, here's an entire hotel full of known illegal migrants. You already got them rounded up. Just haul them out,
Yeah, but I wouldn't save New York. I would let New York wallow in that, because they voted Democrat all day, every day. And Democrats are the ones who welcome millions and millions of people here illegally. So,
as of yesterday, there's 53,000 reported illegal immigrants in New York City. No, there's more than that. Those that have a criminal record. That's just 53,000 that have a criminal record that are illegal.
Well,
in New York City.
But think about our taxpayer money paying to fly the guy who murdered Laken Riley from New York to Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, that was her parents were part of the taxpayers that paid for that, and that is appalling.
We got to take a break. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Get him out before.
Yeah.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Abraham Hamilton III.
If you really want to see the tides turning in our country, can I challenge you and encourage you? If the Lord could grab a hold of us in our family, you would see the tide in our politics turn.
The Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on American Family Radio.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. President-elect Donald Trump has chosen Hillsborough County, Florida Sheriff Chad Chronister to head the Drug Enforcement Administration. But some conservatives are criticizing that selection. David Spunt explains.
Trump made the announcement over the weekend that he wants Hillsborough County, Florida Sheriff Chad Chronister to head the Drug Enforcement Administration. He'll be under a lot of pressure to combat not only fentanyl, but other illegal drug traffickings across the southern border. Chronister will also focus on China because some of the drugs and drug money following across the southern border originates in China. The new DOJ under Attorney General Pam Bondi, assuming she's confirmed, will focus on the flow of drugs from China and other countries into Mexico, making it into the United States. Now, his selection has sparked criticism from some conservatives, including Representative Thomas Massey from Kentucky, a Republican who called Chronister's role in arresting a Tampa pastor for defying COVID-19 lockdowns disqualifying.
The Department of Justice Special Counsel David Weiss says the motion to dismiss Hunter Biden's indictment could be denied by the judges in the case. Madeline Rivera reports Special Counsel Weiss and Hunter Biden's legal team are fighting over how Hunter's gun and tax cases go away.
Hunter's attorneys are arguing that the president's full and unconditional pardon warrants the automatic dismissal of the indictments. Weiss is taking issue with that, saying that does not mean the grand jury's decision to charge him based on finding of probable cause should be wiped away as if it never occurred. Weiss goes on to say there was none and never has been any evidence of vindictive or selective prosecution. And that statement there is particularly striking given that it contradicts the president's assertion that Hunter was targeted for being his son.
Closing arguments continue in a New York courtroom in the case of Daniel Penny, the Marine who is charged with murder for the death of a homeless man on a subway who was threatening passengers. New York Post court reporter Ben Kochman says the case really hinges on one point.
Obviously, both sides, the prosecution and defense, are at odds. There's a lot of bickering in the courtroom, things like that are typical trial stuff. But they agree on a lot of things. The prosecution has acknowledged that Penny's initial intent was good, was to try to help his fellow passengers from a man they described as dangerous and one person called unhinged. The question that the jury is going to have to figure out is, was the chokehold too long and was it reckless? And that may be a challenging question to answer.
California Governor Gavin Newsom wants a so-called Trump-proof legal defense fund of up to $25 million for the state's Justice Department. Doug Osee is a former California gubernatorial candidate. He says Newsom wants to waste more money while people are struggling.
You've hit on the reality of this. Most people in California are struggling so hard and so desperately just to keep their heads above water. They don't have time to confront the governor on this kind of foolishness. This is just more of the same from Newsom.
States and residents need to make farming great again.
In the mid to late 1940s, over half of the American population had a tie to a local family farm or food supply. Today, it's a different story. Mississippi Ag Commissioner Andy Gibson.
Today, 2024, less than 2% of our people in America are actually farming.
Meanwhile, farmers are nearing retirement age. In Mississippi, for example, the average age of a farmer is about 58 years old.
That same trend is true in just about every other state. So you have an aging out of our farm producer population and not a whole lot of young people coming in to fill the gap.
Now, the U.S. does have food available, but many things are imported, and due to what Gibson calls the Walmartization of America, we've kind of taken for granted the ability for us to get food. Therefore, he says states need to make sure we have it more readily available. In Mississippi, the state has tripled its meat processing capacity in the years following COVID, but Gibson says more needs to be done.
A country that cannot feed itself independently of anyone else, that is the most vulnerable situation to be in. Not trying to scare anybody, but I do think it's one of the biggest issues we face as a nation and as states, to make sure that we have the resources available to keep our people fed and clothed and encourage our farmers who are out there and more young people to get involved in producing our food.
I'm Chris Woodward.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
When you see trash in the media, submit it to 1millionmoms.com. Over the years, 1 million moms and our partners have improved advertising choices of programmers and content seen on TV. Just like you, 1 million moms want to protect little eyes and ears from the trash that could hurt them. So when you see trash in the media, visit 1millionmoms.com. Scroll down and look for the Submit Trash button.
Take it away!
1millionmoms.com.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Welcome back, everybody, to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR, and I'm Tim Wildman with Wesley Wildman and with Fred Jackson. And now in studio is Steve Paisley-Jordahl. Good morning, Steve.
Hey, everybody.
Rocking the plaid today, though.
I got the plaid going.
Plaid that now.
I got plaid on.
Yeah, you got plaid on, so I guess you're rocking it too. Just you guys wearing winter plaids, what I call it, winter plaid with the flannel shirts on. Yep. For those who can't see into the studio, or Steve's chair is really jacked up high.
I like this.
So that he's looking down on all of us. he's peering down in his posture here, and
posture.
What is that comfortable with your knees slamming up against the desk?
I do like to be up tall like this. It gives me more room, but especially with the sling I have on my arm, I can't do this. I can't reach up very high, so I have to have everything below me to do this kind of stuff. So,
all right. So we do have Jenna still on the phone with us from Florida. Jenna is on the phone, and Jenna Ellis with Jenna Ellis in the morning, and we were Steve, before, I don't know if you got to hear it, but we were talking about, we wanted Jenna to answer the question about the relative to the pardon. Go ahead, Fred, pose the question.
Yeah, Jenna, this morning, Fox reporter Madeline Rivera said Special Counsel David Weiss and Hunter Biden's legal team are fighting over how Hunter's gun and tax cases go away. I'm going to play you a little bit of her report and then get your response. Cut 1.
Hunter's attorneys are arguing that the president's full and unconditional pardon warrants the automatic dismissal of the indictments. Weiss is taking issue with that, saying that does not mean the grand jury's decision to charge him based on finding of probable cause should be wiped away as if it never occurred. Weiss goes on to say there was none and never has been any evidence of vindictive or selective prosecution. And that statement there is particularly striking, given that it contradicts the president's assertion that Hunter was targeted for being his son.
So according to the report, Jenna, Special Counsel David Weiss says a grand jury found that Hunter Biden was probably guilty of those crimes, and that the assertion from the President Biden, that the cases against his son were politically motivated, he doesn't believe that, doesn't regard that, and therefore what I'm getting from her report is that there could be recharging against Hunter Biden. Is that what that means? This is the first I've heard of this, so I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, and it is a confusing concept because pardon, generally what people think of is, and they're right in this, is that a pardon basically forgives the criminal activity and it removes all legal penalties. And so basically it stops all legal proceedings in their tracks, but it doesn't necessarily remove a conviction from the record, and it just would stop all of the legal consequences. And so it kind of depends on how the judge in the case perceives the pardon and wants to address it. And so basically what I'm gathering from what David Weiss is saying is he's just trying to save his own career. He doesn't want to acknowledge to the court in any way, shape, or form that there was any sort of wrongful prosecution or politically motivated prosecution. And so this is Biden's own DOJ fighting against him. And if he had not issued that statement suggesting that his own DOJ is weaponized, which was a very interesting assertion, because Trump's lawyers can and should use that acknowledgement to say, listen, the sitting president is saying that his own DOJ is weaponized, and so clearly that would have infected the DOJ's activities against Trump as well. But I think this is just David Weiss trying to save his own bacon and not wanting to acknowledge that. But the bottom line is that the pardon itself will have the same effect as in either case, which is that all legal proceedings and consequences against Hunter Biden for any of the DOJ's cases, but also going all the way back to January of 2014. That is how long this pardon extends. No legal proceedings for offenses against the United States, meaning federal offenses, can occur against Hunter.
So why this seems to me like this is Joe Biden protecting Joe Biden.
Oh, yes, it is.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, because what he's a 10-year, he's given a 10-year pardon. Is that the way you describe it?
Yeah, it covers 11 years actually of activity. Yeah.
Why don't you just go back to birth?
Well, what's interesting is that this is basically the extent of the statute of limitations. And so some of the things outside of that would probably be precluded by the statute of limitations. But also it was April of 2014 is when Hunter Biden joined the board of Burisma. And all of these allegations of corruption against the Biden crime family. I mean, this is what this is covering. And so for people like Senator, Josh Hawley and some of these other Republicans that are talking specifically about the two convictions, the tax case and the gun case against Hunter Biden, what they're missing in all of this is that I think that's just a smokescreen. This was, my opinion of this is that the Democrats just put Hunter up there as the fall guy to say, give us a talking point during the campaign that no one is above the law.
Right,
we know that
right.
Biden is going to pardon him anyway.
Right.
And then this will be a pretext to have the pardon extend all the way back so that nobody's going to investigate all of the corruption for the last 11 years.
And the corruption, of course, Jenna, is not just with Hunter, but Joe Biden is implicated in this to the neck.
So if Joe Biden, the president, pardons his son for 11 years or 10 years or whatever, going back to 2014, then there's no investigation. Joe Biden, if he's financially connected to Hunter Biden, in terms of the international money he was getting from China and from Burisma and other places in the world, while his dad was VP, I mean, it was influence peddling. We all know it. Then if Joe Biden, the big guy, as he was referred to in one of the letters or emails, got money, got a cut, then that can't be investigated either. This sort of thwarts everything. Listen, personally, this is Tim talking here, and y'all may care. Maybe we need. I don't care to have any more investigations into Hunter Biden or Joe Biden in any of this. This is my view. You may disagree with me. I think Americans, we know what happened here, and we know that Hunter Biden made a killing off his dad's name illegally for a long time. Now, it may have been, when I say illegally, I mean, I guess it hasn't been, tax evasion is illegal. But I'm talking about this money that he made. It's really illegal to do what he did, but he got away with it. And there have probably been Republicans who've got away with it as well, okay? I'm not saying Republicans like money too, so I'm not saying this hasn't happened in the past. Kind of one of those things where people say, well, quote, everybody does it, okay? But I think we all know what happened here. Joe Biden's, on his last, he's fading fast, Joe Biden. I'm talking about mentally. We see that happening. And so he doesn't even really have the mental faculties to go through any kind of a hearing or court trials or anything like this. So I'm all for, and I think probably President Trump feels, I don't know how he feels, but.
He said he doesn't want to hurt people.
Yeah, I would just.
He said he's not entitled.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be him hurting people.
Well,
they would be hurting themselves. But he doesn't. In other words, he doesn't want to see them prosecuted.
And a couple of years, I don't know how long ago, but he did mention that he would consider pardoning
Hunter Biden.
Hunter Biden.
Yeah,
President Trump did.
I have a question for Jenna.
Yeah, go ahead.
I may. Hey, Jenna, is it possible? I'm hearing whispers that they are wanting Joe Biden to proactively pardon all the people that could be in Trump's crosshairs coming into the new, like I'm talking about Jack Smith and Merrick Garland and all these people that are due for a reckoning when the Justice Department gets cleaned out. Could he proactively pardon those people and then thwart the justice?
Unfortunately, likely yes. We all remember the pardon of, well, only Tim does as the boomer. I wasn't around yet, but I remember historically the pardon of Nixon by Ford, right? And that was proactive because he had not actually been charged with anything related to Watergate or any of that. He was likely going to be impeached, which is of course why he resigned. And pardons cannot cover impeachment, but he resigned before that. But Ford gave him a full pardon, and so nothing was ever pursued. And wouldn't that be so fascinating after the last 4 years of the lawfare and the weaponization of government against not only Trump and his associates, but, Christians, pro-lifers, conservatives, running the gamut. And then it's going to be very interesting to see if Biden does have these kind of broad sweeping pardons that are proactive for anyone else in his administration, including himself. I mean, he may end up just issuing a pardon for himself. And why would Trump not do the same thing, by the way, at the end of his next term? Because he won't have another election coming up, and we've seen all of the lawfare that has been against him and a lot of his associates, including me, by the way. And why would he not just issue a blanket pardon for anyone who has been in any position whatsoever for his administration, so that he doesn't have to deal with all of that after the 4 years?
All right. Well, okay. Well, we will see what happens going forward, but this is what's happened in the last 48 hours with the pardon of Joe Biden. He was never going to pardon his son. No one got to get involved, and he did. Listen, he acted as a father, is what he said. Of course, his son's 50-something years old. I mean, but
an adult responsibility.
I'm not a psychologist here, or
son of a psychologist either.
I'm not a son of a psychologist either. But what you got with Biden is classic enabling, which happens every day, all day across the world. And well-meaning parents bail their kids out of trouble and
that they created.
Yeah, parents bail their kids out of trouble every day, and they know it's wrong to do it, but they do it anyway because they can't help themselves, because they don't want to see their children suffer the consequences of bad behavior. They hope they'll learn without suffering the bad consequences, and they won't do it anymore. That's the perpetual hope of the enabler. I understand that's how humans behave, but it almost never works. And in the case of Hunter Biden, he has a lifetime of misbehavior, which is, for all the world to see. Tragic.
You don't believe he's changed, Tim? I mean, he wrote that heartfelt statement that said,
I don't know.
I'm just I'm going to clean up my life now.
Well, you know what?
And Democrats are always honest.
I know, right? In all seriousness, it's hard for me to be serious sometimes. I do hope Hunter Biden finds Jesus Christ and turns his life over to the Lord, because that's the only way to get truly clean and sober, is to give your life to the Lord, so that when this life's over, however you live it, when this life's over, if you give your life to Christ, you will have eternal life, says the Bible, and that's what Jesus talked about. But I don't wish bad on anybody. I hope Hunter Biden gets his life cleaned up, and I hope his dad gives his life to Christ too, because he needs salvation. We all need salvation. All right, thank you, Jenna. Appreciate it very much.
Amen to that. And this is a great season for the good news of Christ.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, all right, Steve. Next story.
All right, let's take a look at what's going on over in Israel, because there's some interesting things happening. Donald Trump issued a warning the other day. He said if the hostages that Hamas still holds in Gaza are not released by the time he takes office, the 20th of January, there will be, in his words, all hell to pay. To which
he said that?
He said that. And that prompted Benjamin Netanyahu to answer or reply this, cut 15.
I want to thank President Trump for his strong statement yesterday about the need for Hamas to release the hostages, the responsibility of Hamas. And this adds another force to our continuing effort to release all the hostages. Thank you, President Trump.
Meanwhile,
how many hostages do they still have, Steve?
I
know?
I don't know the number.
They say there are 100, but we don't know how many of those are alive.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there's a ceasefire, a tenuous ceasefire going on now between Israel and Hezbollah up in the north, in Lebanon, and there's been some pot shots going back and forth even today. So that's why I say it's tenuous. But the defense minister of Israel, his name is Israel Katz. He has said, if you break the ceasefire and we go back after you, we are no longer going to differentiate between Hezbollah and Lebanon. They have been doing that. The Lebanese government, they've been trying not to hold them accountable. It's just a terrorist group that's occupying the southern part of Lebanon. But now all that's off if the ceasefire gets broken, and Israel will hold the government of Lebanon responsible for what's going on with Hezbollah.
I don't think in my lifetime I can't remember where Israel was this serious about dealing with terrorism.
Yeah, I think the October 7th.
Yeah.
When that happened a year ago, that changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because up until then, it kind of been tit for tat.
Mm-hmm.
But when they did that and they slaughtered and butchered, what was it, 1,000?
Yeah,
1,200.
1,200 Israeli citizens, some of them Americans and Canadians and others. I think Israel said, we're taking the gloves off.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna go after these people, that is Hamas and Hezbollah, and it's us or them. It's us or them. Yeah. But they're not going.
They didn't ask questions about the surrounding countries about what you.
What
do you think about
because
this?
Lebanon houses Hezbollah.
Right, exactly.
So you can't. If Israel were to say, well, we're not going to take on Hezbollah because they're housed in a sovereign country, then they wouldn't do anything. They're helpless then.
Yeah.
They can't do that. They have to hunt down and kill these people wherever they find them.
Right.
Hezbollah invited this. They started firing into Israel the day after that Hamas massacre.
Yeah.
What's happening right now is Israeli intelligence, I was looking at a report this morning, Israeli intelligence has detected that Iran is shipping weapons to Syria, and Syria is then shipping them into Hezbollah.
Yeah, because Syria and Lebanon border.
Yes. So that is going on, and what Israel is saying, as soon as we detect that Hezbollah is rearming,
right,
we regard that as a violation of the ceasefire, and we are going to attack you. That's what's going on.
Next story, Steve.
All right. Hey, good news.
Good news. We want good news, Steve.
Yeah, let's do some good news.
Yeah.
The sale of Bibles is surging. Through this year, through October, the sale of Bibles has increased by 22% over last year. Now, overall book sales, less than 1% increase. But Bibles are just popping off the shelves, and they're saying that people are experiencing anxiety, and they're worried about their children and grandchildren, so they're looking to find some inspiration from the Word of God as to how to deal with life.
What do you think about that?
I think it's a great thing. I think that, they might not know what they got in their hands. They might not know it's the Holy Word of God that can change their lives. They just think, I'm going to read the 23rd Psalm, and hopefully it'll help me, be at peace. There's a lot more in there that can happen.
So the Bible sales are up, what, year over year, 23%?
22% compared to the same period last year, from January through October.
Is that worldwide or U.S.? Or
U.S.
U.S. Go ahead.
That's interesting, too, because I would figure people will be downloading the Bible on their app, because that's an obvious one. But I think I'm just as excited the fact that they're going to get a hard copy.
That's true. That's true.
So
yeah, it's handle the Word of God. I mean, it's more powerful than a two-edged sword. As
What do
they
you think
say.
about that, Fred?
Well, the story goes on to say that they're noticing a spike in the sales of Bibles to young people, which I find kind of interesting. But you stop and think for a moment what young people have experienced over the last 18 months, what we were just talking about in Israel. The attack against men, women, and children, it was a massacre. What happened there? you're going to ask questions, okay, why would Hamas do that? And then within days, you had the demonstrations, hatred against the Jews, despite the fact that 1,200 of their citizens had just been massacred on the streets of America. We had anti-Semitic, anti-Israel hatred being displayed in the streets on our university campuses. I think if you're a young person, you're saying, what's going on here? This doesn't make sense. And the only way to make sense of it is God's word. And then on top of that, you've got this craziness with transgenderism going on. And people saying, I feel, a guy saying, I feel like a girl today, therefore I should be allowed to play on the girls' teams.
Yeah.
And you've got all of that controversy going on. And so a young person is looking at the world and saying, everything is upside down. How do I make sense of this? And some, thankfully, are saying, maybe God's word has the answer to this.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, in part, is what's driving this. It'll be interesting to talk to people like George Barna on this, just to get some thoughts on this.
I'm going to be talking to the American Bible Society later
today.
Yeah,
amen.
About this.
Good.
And let's end here. You know that Justin Trudeau came down to visit Donald Trump, and they had a nice dinner together. They was surrounding a table. It wasn't recorded, but according to two people at the table, this is the conversation that took place. President Trump told Justin Trudeau that Canada has failed the U.S. border by allowing large amounts of drugs and people to cross. Trump said that he was also upset about the trade imbalance between the two countries, which is more than $100 billion to Canada's favor. He said he wants that fixed. Justin Trudeau says you would kill our Canadian economy completely if you put the tariffs in place that you're suggesting, to which Trump replied, so your country can't survive unless it's ripping off the U.S. to the tune of $100 billion? So Trump says, well, maybe Canada should become the 51st state. And don't worry, Justin, I'll let you be governor.
He said that?
Yes.
All right.
Peter Ducey covered
I would
that.
have been liked to have been sitting around that table, too.
What's he talking about?
But they also had a little fun. He had a little fun with it, too. He said, it's being reported that somebody spoke up and said, yeah, I don't know if you want another liberal state, though.
Oh, that's
and,
true.
Yeah, and then Trump said, well, I don't know, we can make it half liberal and half conservative.
Yes. Well, the reality is that Justin Trudeau is in political trouble.
It's bad.
His approval rating is around 25%.
Yeah.
Where the capital C Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre, his approval rating is well above that. We're just waiting for an election in Canada, and Justin Trudeau is finished. But a lot of people don't realize 80% of the exports come out of Canada come to the United States. But it's very advantageous at the moment because the Canadian dollar is like 35% less in value than the U.S. dollar.
Wow.
Which means you can buy a bunch of Canadian stuff.
Sure.
If you want to go to Canada on vacation right now, now's the time to go.
Yeah, okay.
Now's the time to go. So that's why, if you're purchasing Canadian products down here, you're paying, just pennies.
I feel really, really sorry for all the NBA players in the Toronto basketball team who are getting paid in Canadian dollars.
Yeah,
they must be starving. I don't know if they can make their house payment.
Actually, a lot of players don't want to go because in Canada they got
the government, they tax you to death.
The taxation
is
much better.
Socialism.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, when you think of Canada recently, you think about the pastor being taken, pulled out of his congregation. And
Yep.
All right, Fred, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks to Wesley, Steve, Brent Creeley, our producer, Chris Woodward, and let's see, Jenna Ellis was on with us. And we thank you for listening to American Family Radio. And stay with us throughout the day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
So right now may be the perfect time for you to